Hi, what you're about to hear is a video interview that we recorded with Robert. I'm going to put some links down below, and you're going to enjoy this one if you like hearing about men's fashion style and people's journey. I think Robert has got some interesting story how he got to be where he is right now. He's got knowledge, he's super interesting dude. You've got to enjoy this one. So, what's been happening with you? And obviously, I know you from the events that we together go to. Yeah. We obviously chatted online before. We decided to do this this recording together because there is most likely a story to tell for people to hear. So yes, why don't we start by you saying a bit about yourself, what's happening in your world, and usually what I'm doing with these kind of calls is I'm keeping it purposely open, so there is no agenda, there is no questions, there is no points, and we'll see how it goes. And if there is a message at the end of this, so be it. So if it's not, then that's also okay. So tell us about yourself a bit. Any sort of interesting stuff that's happening in your world, and we can take it from there.
Sure. Well, I'm originally from Indiana, which is a Midwestern state, raised just about a half an hour away from Chicago, and have a background in the steel industry. We're definitely manufacturing heavy, very much like the northern half of England. And getting into menswear is unusual in my area of the country because most people are blue collar. They're farmers, they're hunter fisher types, and what have you. So, my story kind of starts with essentially being the first in my family to go to college, starting as an engineering major, switching into finance, and then quickly learning I've got to figure out how to tie a tie. Now, not to be, go negative real quick, but my dad passed away when I was 18 years old, and the man did not own a dress shirt. So we buried him in one of mine that I used to wear for when we had basketball games. We used to have to dress up on game day. And so I used to wear these suits in high school that were, size 42, 44. And in high school, I was maybe a 34 or 36 at best. So you can imagine, the size 18 neck on a size 14 guy. And it was just quite the clownish look. But when in college, I realized if I was going to get a job, I had to be able to tie a four-in-hand knot. And unfortunately, I found GQ and Esquire to be not very helpful. It's like everything is $5,000 in here. I'm just trying to get a job. And if you're familiar with the world, I graduated in December of '07, and that's when the tail of the economy fell out. So going out to the world with a finance degree, I was pretty much unemployable. So I basically, short story long, I kind of fell into politics. But the good news is that people in D.C. and surrounding area have to wear suits still, where folks in the Midwest are much more casual. And from there, I've really I've been an owner of a men's clothing store in the past few years, and have been doing custom clothing in D.C. and hope to kind of branch out and do some more, some more technological type stuff as far as podcasting, research, blogging, things of that nature.
So so you still got that physical brick and mortar store? You're still doing that? Is that still?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're familiar with the way the retail's been going in this country, and maybe even worldwide, is it's a big challenge for retailers to be able to go to market, buy another product or another brand, and then try to mark it up and then compete with those manufacturers. So a good example would be like Nordstrom. We may both go to the market, but they have a lot more buying power. And then when things are out of season, they will just turn them over to Nordstrom Rack and sell them at or below cost. And so for the average consumer, that's where they're purchasing things. In this country, I would say it's TJ Maxx or a Marshalls, which are making 3 to 4 times their money, even though the items are 80% off. Whereas your bigger retailers like the Macy's are struggling very badly. And I read an article yesterday morning from, I think it was Business of Fashion, and there will be more retail closures in 2018 than when the recession started. So it's kind of this retail apocalypse. It's still in full swing.
Yeah, I 100% believe in that. Even the fact that talking about sort of custom clothing as well. This is what we do here in Liverpool as well. We involved in sort of making shirts and suits, and this is what we've been doing obviously at Menswear as well. Um, and just sort of seeing the fact that we've been asked. I remember sort of last year, maybe a couple of years ago, when we sort of started looking into and talking to people about this idea of doing this sort of custom clothing. Um, the immediate question was, oh, so when do you actually open a physical location? And to me, that was never something that I had in mind. It was never something I was 100% sold on and thought that that's a good idea to do. And that was 2 years ago. Now, when I mention to people about custom clothing, no one asks that question. No one is expecting you to have a physical location. It's more like, oh, so do you do house visit? I was like, yeah. Or can you see us in the office? Yeah. So the fact that you had to have at some point physical location, I think, kind of goes away with this entirety of humankind wanting things quicker. Meaning, instead of me going to see you, you come and see me and measure me in my house. I'm obsessed with that kind of things, because I'm even trying to optimize right now how I cut my hair in a way that I've been searching, like who in the area can do house visits for me? Do I have to go to barber, or can barber come to me? And I'm prepared to pay a premium for someone to be here at 4:30 in the afternoon and sit down for 10, 15 minutes, cut my hair, and they go. And I'll just carry on whatever I was doing, right? Because the sort of the speed of doing things is far greater than me going to town, find a parking space, walk, wait in the queue for the barber, have a good chat, maybe go for a coffee after, and it's 4 hours gone. And it's like,
Right.
we need to optimize this thing. So I think the same custom clothing, I think the same, talking about Macy's, just to close that loop, I think those retail big stores, they're still doing the same thing they were doing in 2001 and 1996. Sure. Nothing has changed. The fact that they are on Facebook or Instagram doesn't change who they are. Like, they still those big, massive, sort of foot square businesses that no one needs anymore. Like, if I would have to go to Macy's or any other, because we went to Atlanta, we spent a few days just sort of walking about to Target and Macy's. Kill me now. Like, they're so big. They mass. Like, where do I find a white T-shirt? Like, I don't know.
Right.
Where do there's hundreds of items, there's thousands of items. Like, I don't want to do that. I just want to have a quick in and out, if anything. I think that's the biggest problem for them.
Yeah, and I think, no doubt. Well, I think in the 70s, 80s, your J.C. Penney's and Sears thought that they could compete on price alone, right? That's what kind of corporate America was going for. But the reality is that men still don't really know how to dress themselves, and they're willing to pay a premium to have some sort of concierge services, regardless of what their income level is.
Correct.
And like you said, you walk into a J.C. Penney's, you see 6,000 ties and 6,000 shirts. You have no idea how to match them. It's overwhelming. You just want simple, you want easy, you want done. But in America, and I would assume it's very similar overseas, is that you're serving kind of three generations. You got baby boomers that are kind of headed out. You got your Gen Xers who have the money, for about in their 40s. And then you've got these millennials that are between 20 and 35, and they each wear their clothes differently. They expect their incomes are different, and they also expect kind of different level of I guess service and expectation. And you're right. There's no doubt that the direct sales, the baby boomer definitely says, "Hey, come to my office, come to my home, just fix everything, and I'll pay you whatever you want." The millennial definitely, in my opinion, is a little more high maintenance. You want things tighter. Doesn't quite have the same budget.
Yes.
But there are clothing stores, and I would assume this is similar in your neck of the woods, is that younger people tend to live more for experiences as opposed to materialism. And so if they're going to be a consumer, they want to have an experience like the Starbucks, right? And so there are custom clothiers that have moved into a brick and mortar footprint, but it's not like a big retailer where they're holding the bag and all this inventory. They may have a whiskey bar, a men's salon, maybe a place to smoke cigars, 100%. A patio. And so men are willing to pay this premium to be able to do all the things that they want to do in life in one spot. You know, where
Hmm.
women have the tendency to, one, buy clothes when they're happy, sad, as a hobby, as a sport,
Hmm.
you know, with friends, by themselves, where men buy clothes, as I like to say, because the law requires it.
Yeah, yeah, it's
And
true.
so, and so women tend to be more farmers when they put together outfits. One, they don't want to be told what their style is. They will go to multiple places to pick
Mm,
things out. Where a
mm,
guy goes to a clothing store, sees the mannequin, and points and grunts like a caveman and
mm,
says, "That's what I want.
yeah,
Okay, I'm in, I'm out." Right? I
yeah.
don't, I don't want to think. But if you can give me a shot of whiskey in the meantime,
Hmm.
I'll stay around for a little bit longer.
Mm,
And
mm,
but that's how you build a relationship. Is, I think, alcohol. You know, despite, you know, race, religion, culture, creed around the world,
yes.
alcohol can be a great uniter.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. No, I 100% agree. I think that's why you see a lot, even in the UK, we see that in barber shops where the lads just hang about for a bit longer because they've got a stuff to talk about, but also there is a free beer or free whiskey or whatever else. Whilst you wait, you can have a sip of something so that's how you create that for sure, no doubt. What
Yeah.
else? What else is happening? Are you still sort of involved in custom clothing? Still, are you doing that?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
it's, working in Washington, D.C., there are a lot of young people who work what they call on the Hill or in Congress,
Hmm.
and they get paid so poorly that they need some sort of side hustle.
Hmm.
Now, I work in the nonprofit space, working on political policy issues in the states. So I make more than most of them do, but at the same time, I'm not getting rich. However, DC, something being from the Midwest, we're kind of slow, as they like to say, in the South, even slower. And so the East Coast is very bustling. The challenge to me being an entrepreneur and trying to do the side hustle is the time and energy that it requires when the day job is pretty demanding. But
Hmm.
I've been working with another young man to bring up a brand called Custom Hill or Capitol Hill Clothiers.
Hmm.
And I've been working on a website called Men's Insights that is
Hmm.
kind of like the Art of Manliness, but it's a little bit more vanilla.
Hmm.
Um, right now they're both in their infancy, but I'm putting the time and the money into them to get them off
Hmm.
the ground. So it's something I hope to grow into being able to do something full time. But I'm very interested in helping the other guys in Menfluential as well, and seeing, you got the folks like Antonio and Aaron
Hmm.
where they're trying to figure out how to scale their
Hmm.
businesses,
Of
and they
course.
need people they can trust that are, reliable and
Mm.
work hard and also understand the industry.
Mm. Yeah, I mean it's very interesting because Art of Manliness, it's one of those websites that I I think I've heard an interview with the main guy. I forgot what his name is. Um, I forgot. But the Art of Manliness. It's their YouTube channel, their content, anything
Are you
they
talking
put up.
about it's Brett McKay?
Brett McKay, that's the one. Yes. So their content and everything they do um, is of such a quality, and I'm like they put a video on YouTube, and they has like 500,000 views in like a week. So the herds that people follow them, the amount of people that follow them and believe in the spiel is unbelievable. Like I think I've listened to an interview with Brett, and it was like 6 million views a month or something, like something
Yeah.
incredible. Like it's the I think they said it's like sixth or third biggest men's website in the US after GQ and Esquire, or obviously
Yeah.
GQ and all the others. They've got obviously massive amount of budgets, and they are they are GQ, right?
Sure.
But and then there is he and his website, and it's like mind blowing where he is, and it was just funny because I was thinking about this the other day. Actually, I was thinking how many other sites are like his, where he doesn't talk about clothes, he doesn't talk about a lot of things that you would think that our space is all about. Like how to look good, and
Sure.
he's like, no, how to not get killed or that kind of
Yeah.
thing, which is also super important. But for instance, I would never talk about this. I haven't got the confidence or sort of knowledge to talk about this. But he is, and I appreciate him for that. So he doesn't go into this sort of style and fashion and custom clothing. None of that. He's just like how to be a good man, which is
Yeah.
what I like about him. So if you ever going to create anything similar to him, I think he wanted something really good because it's definitely a trend. People want to do good, want to be good people in general. So if you can voice
Yeah.
that somehow, that's great.
Yeah, well, I think when folks are trying to start a website or
Mm,
some sort of personal branding,
mm,
particularly influential, they're trying to figure out where do I fit in this space.
mm,
And one thing about Brett is that he covers so many different
mm,
categories,
mm.
but his brand is extremely consistent. He's got
Sure.
that classical kind of Boy Scout kind of marketing in terms of his sketches and everything,
Hmm. Hmm.
which I find to be very appealing.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
think one of the key things when his website's 10 years old now,
Correct.
so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not like Rome wasn't built in a day,
Mm,
but
mm,
as you build that brand and get that following, you enable yourself to. I think the best self promoter probably in the country is Tim Ferriss,
mm,
and his books, The 4 Hour Work
mm,
Week, 4 Hour
mm,
Body, 4 Hour
mm.
Chef, Tribe of Mentors,
Yeah, or Titans or whatever it was.
so
Yeah. Mm.
and Tools of Titans.
Uh-huh.
Well, the thing is that as you grow that following, you're able to kind of climb the social ladder in terms of your interviews and stuff. And
Mm,
so,
mm,
you know, I've been I'm a lifelong, I'd say, a fan of Nassim Taleb, who was on Brett McKay's podcast about a week ago talking about his new book,
okay.
Skin of the Game. And to be able to get an author that's a New York Times bestseller, I think for someone like you or I, it's a little bit, it's like, who is this guy, right? But for someone
Mm,
like Brett, who's been building slowly and surely, it's
of
kind of like
course.
dating up, if you
Mm,
will.
mm,
And I think just a couple weeks ago, he had Jordan Peterson, the Canadian
mm,
author,
mm.
behavioral
Yes.
psychologist,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
on.
yeah.
So, and his podcasting is
Controversial. He is. Yeah. Mm,
extremely professional, very
mm,
smooth.
mm.
Even his advertisements are very clean. So,
Yeah.
definitely he's someone to aspire to be like. And now he's getting more into the strength aspect.
Correct. Yes.
I know he just spoke at StrengthCon about a week or two ago,
All
and
right.
so
Okay.
there's a guy who's I think a good example for all.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt, but it's just interesting for. I mean, this is what I find in sort of recent weeks um, when I started to sort of look into how can I get people like yourself and Antonio and whoever else there is in our space to sort of talk to me about what they do and how they do things and whatever else, and it's surprisingly how easy that is um, when there's obviously personal connection, so we know each other and we've seen each other
Sure.
before. But also the fact that if you sort of say, "Oh, it's going to be on YouTube and podcast, and we're going to do this, and maybe some little clips, and this and this and this happens," and all of a sudden it's like if you've got your own podcast, it's like another little door opens. Like I know I was talking to one of the sort of famous photographers here in the UK, and I kind of know them. I think they know of me, and I messaged them the other day on Messenger on Facebook, and I asked them, do you want to be on podcast? And we're going to talk about this. They because they're involved in some sort of charity, and they said, yeah, that's fine, no problem. And I'm thinking, wow, as easy as that, as easy as asking a question, because we somehow maybe have mutual friends. Someone that it's that they know, and before you know, they're like, yeah, fine, we can spare half an hour to talk about this new thing, and before you know each other, you've been on each other's podcasts or whatever content. It's cool, If you're not doing podcasts, I think you should start. I don't know. Do you do podcasts yourself?
Well, we're getting ready to launch one. I think the key is making, I've been kind of hung up on having like a good intro, and
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to do
Okay,
it.
okay.
As my dad always said, if you can do something once, do it right. So, but I believe the biggest challenge for most folks is you got to be consistent with it.
100%.
You need to, continually create content and release it in some sort of timed fashion. Google really eats that kind of stuff up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for a lot of folks who are creating content, even if it's quality content,
Mm-hmm.
they need to have a good, strong understanding of Google SEO and marketing analytics and stuff like that. So, I mean, if you're just hosting on iTunes, that's really a limiting kind of factor. Whereas if you do it on YouTube, even if you're not even using a picture, like the video of us,
Mm-hmm.
you can have the books that are cited or articles. You could create hyperlinks because the idea is to kind of quote unquote trap people in your content.
Mm-hmm.
But and you can have Amazon affiliates to certain products and create commissions. But at the end of the day, YouTube people are like, why would you put a podcast on YouTube? People don't watch it. You'd be surprised if people who get in their car
Yeah.
or they're on the
Yeah.
treadmill and they listen/watch podcasts.
But
So
that's where it is. That's why this interview actually gonna go into both YouTube and SoundCloud because I'm hosting
yep,
my on SoundCloud, but it doesn't really matter. And then who knows? Maybe we're gonna take snippets of that and put it also on. Another thing I was talking to Antonio about Alexa Skill. we launched our Alexa skill for fashion
Oh, really?
on Amazon.com, and it's crazy how many
Yep.
people are listening to flash briefings every morning and they want to know more about fashion. You should
Yeah.
get onto that space as well. I'm telling that everyone. I'm saying that to everyone. Everyone should be on Alexa's. Like I've told that to Antonio. I've told another 2 or 3 people I've been interviewing recently. Like
Mm.
Alexa's skill is legit. You have to go on this.
Really, what's interesting is I was involved in a webinar like 2 weeks ago, and it was like building your voice brand.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to think of which website. It was either the Sourcing Journal or Business of Fashion. I can't recall, but anyway, it was essentially a couple of gentlemen who worked for some big corporations, and they said, "Hey, this is like the future where people are waking up saying, 'Hey Alexa, like what T-shirt do I put on?'"
But it's
So
interesting also. Like imagine if all of a sudden your Alexa is connected, your home Alexa to your car Alexa to your, business. You driving, all of a sudden you're saying, okay, Alexa, what's happening today? What's in my diary? Also, email this, remind this, send text to her. And that's while you're driving. That's while you are, you're in a shower, right? And oh, Alexa, do the like it's going to change fundamentally how we communicate. In my opinion, well, it's not only my opinion, but everything that. Imagine all of a sudden if it connects to like other people's Alexas in a way that tell me who's been, is there any people who's been, I don't know, searching or doing anything for custom clothing? There's 16 people in your area who are interested in custom clothing. Right? Can you send it? Like, all of a sudden it could just go a level up just from simply, being a funny and Alexa, tell me a joke. But it could actually be a quick business returns if you somehow are there, understand the platform, and as you said, sort of build that voice sort of presence. Whether that's podcast, whether that's Alexa, whether that's flash briefings on Alexa or Google or whatever else they're going to come up with, because no doubt
yeah.
Alexa's not going to be the only one.
Yeah, and I think Tim Ferriss, he wrote in his first book, The 4 Hour Work Week, in terms about like scaling your time and productivity. Again, this is before some of these new technologies, but he mentioned like getting a personal assistant overseas, which would cost virtually nothing. And I think at the end of the day, for a lot of us, it's these little micro tasks that we have in our lives that we can somehow outsource them.
Absolutely.
Right? And so asking, if only we could get Alexa to read our emails and answer and respond, right?
Yeah.
That's what we need to get to, because that's probably when we talk about, productivity and efficiency, email is probably the biggest, bog down for me personally and professionally.
Yeah.
So what did you do for 4 hours of your day? Answer emails,
Good. Yes, I 100% agree. How do you, because I'm trying to always think about if anyone's going to be listening to this, what do they want to know from you? Because they probably know my story and my ideas about certain things. But for instance, if we had a conversation with Jacob Clayton from Image Ambassador, he's got his own clothier as well. You probably know of him or you've seen him. And one of the things I've asked him was, how does he get his clients? How do you get your clients to say yes to you in terms of even an initial appointment? How do you get, for your custom clothing business or for any other, how do you generally get people to say yes to you when they have got no idea who you are? Like, how do you do that and your business?
I think in the introduction aspect, I've always been a firm believer that you dress one step better than everybody else. So you need to dress the context, right? You can't wear a tuxedo to a 3-year-old's birthday party. But at the same time, you can't be the guy always schlepping around in a t-shirt as well. So one thing is, if you dress, you don't want to be the clown, as I guess is what I'm saying. But when you're dressing just a half notch above everybody else, you get noticed and you stand out, but in a positive way. So that's, being in DC, everyone is inherently conservative just based on the nature of Congress, and you think of the president, folks like that, they're always wearing navy and charcoal. But I have no fear to go on the hill and wear maybe a lapel flower or maybe a fun pocket square. And those are little details. Women particularly, they definitely pay attention to that, but men too. And they tend to ask a question. Hey, where did you get that? And that's usually the end of the conversation. But you ask them, like, why'd they ask that question? So are you interested in men's clothing or whatever? And they tend to like, well, yeah, but they always have this comma but. I don't have the time, money, energy, or effort, and you can kind of dig into, finding out what's their why. Okay, so
Mm-hmm,
you want to
mm-hmm,
dress better. Why? Well, I want to get girls. Why? Because I want
mm-hmm,
to get married, or I want to.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You just got to keep asking why to reach that inner person, and you kind of find out what their core is, and when they wake up, why do they do what they do? Whether it be their hobbies, their profession, their family life, whatever that may look like. So I think it's a bit of an investigation. I don't want to say a game of 20 questions, but kind of reaching that interpersonal versus that, in DC there's a lot of surface level small talk of what do you do for a living and how much money do you make kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's. I mean, I'm gonna. Let's dive deeper into this because that could be actually of value to people. So let's say you are on the public transport somewhere. You're going somewhere. You're looking nice. You're looking happy. You're looking slightly different than anyone else. Okay, I get that. People get that. Be different. Cool. And then what happens? So you see another guy, he's asking a question, and then you sort of going straight into this conversation about style, but he's got only 2 minutes to spare. His stop is on the
Sure.
next bus stop. Like, how do you give him business cards straight away? Like, how? And is that the best method, or are you actually going to a networking event that that some
Yeah.
people for your business going to be there, or do you get referrals before that and people introduce you? Like, how do you?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be very hit and miss if you're just going to hang around in the bus all day trying to see who's
That's
it,
right.
it could be low return on investment, right?
Yeah, you don't know if the guy's making 20,000 a year or 200,000
Yeah,
in
exactly,
US
exactly.
dollars. But well, I think at the end of the day, as people, we are all in the business of people, and we're all in the business of selling. Whether we're trying to sell ourselves to a new employer,
Hmm.
a job
I agree.
opportunity, whether it's some sort of significant other,
Yeah.
dating, or some sort of product and service. So. I think having that mentality in every aspect that you do, and in a positive way, it's not just transactional. I think I always use this um, analogy that is very politically incorrect, but I say there's the one night stand, and then there's the marriage. One is a instant transaction for instant gratification. The other is a long term value proposition, and
Mm-hmm.
so if you're always being in transaction mode, people can sense that of like, hey, this guy's salesy, he's kind of pushy,
Yeah.
versus here's someone who actually wants to get to know who I
Yeah,
am.
but then you've got an obligation in a way that your wife is, for instance, agreed for you to pursue that dream of building your own career as a custom clothier, and
Mm,
you've been sent out there to today to the public to network to get business to make money, and
yeah.
then all of a sudden, how do you justify to yourself and to her and to whoever else you sort of respond to that? Well, today I've met 16 people, and how many of them bought a suit? Well, in 3 years' time, they may get a custom shirt from me. So it's like super difficult. It's easy to say, very difficult to do, right? Because you wanna have that transaction. You want to think about, yeah, I know I have to be patient, but how am I going to stay patient if I have bills to pay and somehow I need to make money out of this? So how do you
Yeah.
address that? Do you address it by having another job like you and me? I mean, I used to have a side hustle for this, but now this grew enough so I can concentrate just on that. But in
Right.
your case, like, is that the best way forward? So you still sort of treat that as a side hustle?
Yeah, well, I think there's a few different approaches. I worked at a mutual insurance company where they basically gave you a phone book and said, dial for dollars. It's all commission. I think evolutionary that puts a man in a
Mm,
fight or flight response,
mm,
and
mm.
then you tend to sell people what you want to sell them because you need to feed yourself.
Yeah.
And so you generally don't have the prospect or the client's best intent in mind. And I think retail clothing is the same way. When you got to turn the inventory, all of a sudden everything looks good on that guy because you got new stuff coming in. You got to get that stuff out.
Yeah, yeah,
Custom
yeah, yeah, yeah,
clothing is a
exactly.
totally different approach, right? You can
Yes.
really find out what the guy is after. What's his family life like? What's his
Mm,
profession? What are his hobbies? And you can
mm,
tailor,
mm,
a
mm,
suit or whatever it is around those needs, right? Needs
mm,
based selling.
mm,
So I think it's a lot, I would say easier, but to build it on the side creates a level of, you don't have the, I don't want to say urgency, but I guess the panic or the anxiety of having to close. But it's a good thing to
mm,
understand there's a system that was developed in insurance that's applicable to just about any type of sales in America, particularly. It's
Hmm.
called the one card system. It
Hmm.
was developed by an insurance man in Chicago named Al Granum. And so essentially he created this is, 25 years of data that he collected.
Hmm.
And it was all of his employees. And essentially, how many phone calls did they make? How many appointments did they set? How many appointments did they keep? How
Hmm.
many of those folks, so the folks that they met with were considered suspects. How many suspects became prospects? And then how many prospects became ultimately clients?
Hmm.
And they call it the 10-3-1 system.
Hmm.
So for every people you meet, three people are prospects and one become a client. But of that one, it's 60% the first year, 10% the second year, or 30% the second year, and the last 10% in the third year. So when you kind of extrapolate these numbers, and again, this is the data and the science, not the soft skills,
Hmm.
but essentially look at how many people to sell life insurance to, how many
Hmm.
people you need to call and meet with,
Exactly. Yeah.
right? But as you get better at this system, it ends up turning into 10-6-6, meaning that for the 10 people that you get essentially
Wow.
referred to, six of those are going to be qualified people that have the
Hmm.
money to invest you, that are there to act,
Hmm.
and you're going to close every single one of them. So
Hmm.
I think in the beginning stages, you have to understand rejection
Hmm.
is really, you got to get through the no's to
100%.
get to the yes. So
Yeah.
and
Super
in
important, right?
our age group, it's a little bit challenging because we've been raised. I don't want to use the word snowflakes, but mommy and daddy said that we are the best, we are the
Hmm.
greatest. We've never had to endure, adversity of
Hmm.
previous
Hmm.
generations, much
Hmm.
less the
Hmm.
cavemen of a
Hmm.
thousand years ago.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so when we get rejected, it's totally demoralizing. We just want to give up and do something else that's easier. And
Hmm.
so if it were
True.
easy, everybody would be doing it, right?
No, it's true. It's very interesting because I was also obviously to talk with Jacob about this. Is if people wanted to start their own businesses, what should they be looking at, and what should they be looking into? And I think a idea is idea is important to have a good idea of what you want to do, and obviously you have to kind of like it. So I like to dress nice, and I understand menswear. That therefore it's natural to me that I should be in this business, same as you. But it's but also, I think soft skills are super important. And again, that's something that, same as dressing well, same as dating. We were chatting about this with someone today, actually, a client of mine this morning. And he was like, "Oh, I would like to get something from you." And da, da, da. I was like, "But you don't have to tell me that you don't know how to dress well. Like, it's fine. Like, you can, like, I'm not going to judge you. I know that's 95% of society." I said to him, "It's
Right.
the same as if you would have to admit if you have to admit that you are not good at dressing. To me, it's the same like for other people. It's the same like saying that you are very bad in sex, or that you don't know how to date, or you don't make enough money to like like I don't know how to dress. It's I'm I'm bad lover. It's probably on the same kind of level of intimacy, in very often in society's eyes, in my opinion, that people don't want to say, guys don't want to say that they don't know how to dress, that they've been
Mhm.
using the same combinations for years, because they don't want to really admit that. And then
Yeah.
you got us coming to them and say that it's fine, we can help you, we can make your life better because of that. You don't have to worry and don't have to feel embarrassed. It's like having a dating coach, but just for clothing. That's super interesting.
Yeah.
When you sort of start thinking about that, all of a sudden people are like, yeah, it's probably a bit like that. I never sort of pay attention to that because I didn't know how to do it. Therefore, I was just always jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. But I know I can do better. I should do better. And it's super interesting. So soft skills, like, super important to me as well. The ability to understand how to close and what not to say, what to say, and how people are going to be affected by what you're going to say. Amazing.
Sure.
The whole story's there.
Yeah, even though, neuro linguistic programming, right,
Yes.
NLP hasn't been scientifically proven,
Mm,
it has been proven through, the folks like Tony Robbins that
mm,
use it,
mm,
right?
mm.
So, the word, I always, as someone who's in politics in America, all Americans really, or to say a majority of them like the Affordable Health Care Act, but the majority of them don't like Obamacare. Well, it's the same thing, right? It's
Okay.
the way that it's been, it's not what you say, it's how you say it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the same principle. Is one thing I learned about owning a men's retailer is that men, while they proclaim not to be emotional or sensitive, they are definitely as or more insecure than women.
Oh, 100%.
And
A
so,
million percent.
when a guy comes in there and says, "How does this bow tie look on me?" and let's say it's a little skinny pink bow tie and a 400-pound man, before you respond with what the scientific logical answer is, you need to ask him what his opinion is first, because it may be his favorite, right? And so you kind of say, "Hey, that's a really great bow tie. However, this one right here will, accentuate, your jawline, or your chest, or something like that." And so you got to be able to learn how to navigate that conversation until he becomes your best friend, and then you can say, "Hey, buddy, that pink bow tie, that you look like a clown, right?" So you got to know where you're at in that relationship to be more direct or more transparent. Not to say you should ever lie to anyone, but there's that, like you said, it's soft skills for a reason. You got to be soft with people to figure out how they think and how they respond, then tailor the conversation accordingly.
Yeah, it's again something that I'm 35. I finished school a few years ago, but I don't still think that there is enough on that and about that in sort of curriculum, any sort of level of schooling, because not talking about dressing well, but talking about how to converse with people, like how to have a good argument. I remember when my wife, she's a doctor and she's been studying here in Liverpool, and what we had is every now and again she would meet her colleagues or fellow students that went through a private education, completely private education, sort of high-end top schooling here in England. You're talking, I don't know, $10,000, $15,000 for semester. Probably high-end. And she said one thing that is super apparent when she was talking to them is that the amount of argument and conversation that, and the soft skills base is on the, like, they will say few sentences and they from private schools. Like, it's insane the level of questions and how they phrase their concerns and how to get back to you with another argument. Like she says, it's just fun to watch, and it's unbelievable how obviously those private schools teach people how to do it, whereas obviously public schools haven't got budgets or time to do it. And it's the whole sort of the science of having a discussion is on different level. And again, we don't teach that in the normal system. People don't know how to do it, and therefore then they have to go and spend some time learning that themselves, I guess.
Well, I was going to say, you think of evolution. I mean, most humans throughout time have learned through trial and error, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we don't know how the Egyptians built the pyramids, but I can assure you they probably didn't consult a slide rule, which is before our time, much less TI-89 calculator, right?
Yeah.
So, there's something to be said for trial and error, even if you have. I think formal education serves as the framework or the rails, but at the end of the day, so that's talking.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you got to be a doer.
Yeah.
And those soft skills, if you're not, you can read a book all day long, but if you're not practicing, then it really doesn't matter.
No, I agree. I think it's super important for folks to understand that they have to invest in themselves, whatever that is. Whether that's there is. I mean, I'm always baffled. I went to university recently, and I was talking to students, and I've showed them two websites that I'm using. One is lynda.com. The other one is, I think, Udemy, where you can have like online courses, right? You can sort of learn anything, any skill. And they didn't know that. Neither of those guys who were like, I was talking to maybe 60 guys there, or I was like, oh, this website, and there was no response. And I'm thinking, how do they learn? Like, or they just rely on university to tell them everything they need to know? It's insane. Like
the ivory tower,
unbelievable. So I was like, Jesus, people, you better get your act together, because guess what? After those 3 years in university, the outside world is waiting for you. They're going to require some extra skills. You have to be able to navigate through a lot of different difficult sort of situations, and I don't think the university is prepping you for that. So,
sure. Well, in America, definitely education, in my opinion, has become a bit of a big business. It's become its own industrial complex. Why we have all these millennials with student debt, and my undergrad's finance, and so we were learning about efficient portfolio management or Gordon's dividend growth model, and I always had a lot of, I guess, issues or beef with finance from a textbook level, because it was always you always made all these assumptions. And in mathematics, if it's calculus, in engineering, it's very straight, very direct, solve for X, or it's a limit, whatever, differential equations. But with statistics, it's always like, well, it's how confident are you in something? And I always found university education to be a little too theoretical. And again, I think it's important to maybe have that framework. Not that you can't get it from an online course
Mm,
or be an
mm,
autodidact, right?
mm,
Really learn it on your own. But
mm,
until you kind of put in application and find out where it works and where it doesn't,
mm,
again, we come back to it really doesn't matter. But
mm,
I think
mm,
technology is a double-edged sword for the world. I mean, it's become our greatest tool to democratize learning. But at the same time, if you don't, I mean, again, like you and I, we met through Influential, which we both signed up online, right? You're able to find people with common interests and what have you, and you're able to develop your social skills there. But then there are other people who play, World of Warcraft 24 hours a day, and so technology's been a
mm,
curse to
mm,
them.
mm,
And so
mm.
while
True,
they may be connecting with people online, but
true.
then they've never developed a social skill to actually, when they meet them in person, they don't know how to say hello
Mm.
because all they know how to do is talk through an avatar.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And that divide's only going to be bigger because there's less and less people wanting to invest their time and money to actually educate themselves and to sort of how to talk to people is a skill right now. When you think like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, our parents just they for instance, they knew everyone in the area. They would knew them by the first name, by the second name, what they do, where they work. I barely know my next door neighbor. That's super,
Sure.
super strange. Right. Anything else, Robert, that we should be, that it's super important that we should be focusing on, that we want to leave our audience with? Anything, any sort of final thoughts, anything that you think we haven't talked about this and you're a big believer of that. Is there any sort of thoughts that you had as well about anything? Could
Yeah.
be style, men, just any of your businesses that you are doing, anything that you think we should be talking about.
Sure. Well, I think for me, when the epiphany of menswear happened was when I read a book called Dressing the Man by Alan Flusser.
Okay.
That really it was the framework and guideline to help me understand the math and science behind pattern, complexion, height, body profile. Once I read that book, it just all made sense because I can show you plenty of pictures growing up where I was not the most well dressed person on earth,
Uh-huh.
and I think we're all growing, we're all learning
Sure.
throughout time. So that was a really important moment for me. And months later, when I quoted that Brooks Brothers was the inventor of the button-down polo collar shirt in 1896, the manager said, "How do you know that?" And I said, "Well, I read Alan Flusser in a book called
Mm.
Generations of Style, written by Brooks Brothers." And she goes, "When can you start?" And I said, "I've never worked in retail." She goes, "You get 60% off the whole store." I said, "When do I start?" So I never thought that I would end up in menswear in any way, shape, or form. But I
Mm.
think that book is a great of all the men. There's a lot of junky menswear books out there. I mean, there are hundreds. I know Raphael Snyder, Gentleman's Gazette. He's read several hundred. I've read about 100 menswear books, and I'll tell you about 80 of them were okay at best. A lot of repeating of the do's and don'ts.
Mm.
So I think that book is a
I
really
agree.
great framework for guys that are interested in men's style. But I'd ultimately tell people you learn by doing, and you got to learn how to fail and fail fast because that's how we invented the light bulb, right? I mean, you got to find out 1,000 ways that it doesn't work for you to figure out that one way that it does. So let's go back to the 10-3-1 numbers game. You got to put in the effort. You can read all the books, you can do all the blogs and everything, but until you go out there and ask the girl out, or give your business card to that client that you want to sell a custom
100%.
suit for, all the PhDs in the world isn't going to help you be a stronger, better
I'll
person.
show you
No
something.
offense to anyone with a PhD.
Talking about the books. Hold on, let me just have you again. Talking about the books, I was recently thinking about what to do, and I come across this. Well, I knew this book existed, which is
Oh yeah,
the you could probably see the Parisian Gentleman. Um,
that one is not cheap.
Jesus, it's not. I think it cost me like $50 or something. But
Yeah.
it's very interesting. It's an amazing book, and I thought if I ever going to do a book, it's going to be in that format, and it's going to have beautiful pictures like this. Um, but what I found, with this book is um, the complete and sort of even without any questions, unquestionable love for custom, for handmade, for like beyond the price. Like it's unbelievable how Hugo and other people in this book and all the artisans in Paris, because he's sort of circling around there in France, like it's 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 mind blowing how much they actually believe in their product. And what I learned from that, from just sort of flicking through that book, because you don't even read it, you just inhale it. That's what
Sure.
you do. And it's the idea that we shouldn't be asking about how much things cost. I mean, we should, but we should in the way that if it's made with by hand, by an artisan, by someone, like, let's be part of that process. Let's understand that the pair of shoes that cost $500 and they've been made by hand. Like, someone has actually been making them by hand. Like, it's unreal how much love and experience and enthusiasm went into those shoes or gloves or anything else or a bow tie or anything else that you make, and it's like handcrafted. It's unbelievable. That book just sort of opened my eyes into, okay, that's what really handcrafted and bespoke means, that you're on the next level mentally as well. It's not only you have to have a sizable wallet to do that, but it's
Sure.
one of the lapels could be slightly different than the others, and that's awesome. That's the beauty about this. Like, I love that book. It's just it's mind blowing in that sense. So I thought I'd have to show you this and show the folks, whoever's going to be doing this. We'll link something else down below for where can you get it. But yeah, it's like $50, I think, at least.
Yeah.
Yes, good, right. What should people do? When do they find you? Well, what's the easiest way to talk to you? Should they talk to you about, what's the topic they should talk to you about? Is it the custom clothing? Is it any sort of the non-profit that you do? Is it your own other businesses or an interest that you've got?
Yeah.
Like, what's the one thing if they meet you, like, oh, let's talk about this?
Well, when I had my men's clothing store, it was always politics. I have I've been in and out of it for about a decade, and I'm mostly focused on U.S. politics. I know a little bit. My master's degree is in international commerce and policy, so I have a little bit of training in that space. But I would say someone who knows how to unite people, how to find common interests, and how to ultimately solve problems. So people tend to ask me about President Trump or Congress or any of the states. I work in all the states, so that's kind of and I'm a person who brings positive diplomatic energy to a space that, particularly in this country, is very, very tense and very touchy. So that's what I know more than several, I would say most. But and in the menswear space, I understand the supply chain from manufacturers. I have relationships overseas to the designing, to the manufacturing, to the wholesale, to the retail. And I know, like, where Suit Supply makes their stuff for Indochino, and know the owners of those factories. So I'm helpful in the sense of the guys that want to get in the space to kind of see where value really is, or where kind of some of it's just kind of marketing, BS. So that's probably my strengths.
So if anyone would want to or consider starting their own brand of whatever that is, made to measure shirt online or whatever else, they could probably contact you, and you'll be able to sort of direct them into a few.
Certainly.
Great. Right. Okay.
And I love helping people who want to get into it. I love it.
I love connecting people. I think there is something about connecting people with it's something magical when you can help someone from your network talking to someone else from your network, and they all of a sudden like each other. They do business with each other. Like, this is this is the best thing ever. If you ever go to that, any of your listeners, to that level of network, sizable network, that you can actually connect people that way, there is no better feeling. Like, it's just it's amazing.
Well, I think there's something psychological about how we're basically recreating tribes from thousands of years ago, right? I mean, like you said, when you live in a multi-million people environment, you don't even know your own neighbor. I mean, what kind of sense of community is that, So I think there's something to be said for building, long-term, genuine relationships where you can empower and inspire people to do.
Good. So what do you think, growing 2018, growing your online custom, not online, but like custom clothing business, or what's the focus for you for the rest of the year?
Definitely, I'm looking at, different opportunities and seeing where the space will grow. I've definitely learned that custom clothing is active income. You got to go out there and you got to chase it, and you got to constantly resell it. Whereas, looking at, Antonio is a good example where, he moved away from that, went more online. At the end of the day, do you want to create some sort of passive income or something like that, where you go to bed at night and you wake up and you had 3 Amazon affiliate sales, and you made $1,000? I mean, I think
Mm.
you got to do one to create the revenue and everything, but I would plow the active income into the passive so that you create some
Mm.
sort of multiple income streams, if you will, where
Mm.
you're trying to scale your own time, energy, and effort. So,
True.
but never do anything that you're not passionate about. That's definitely the most important thing.
Brilliant. I think it's perfect to leave at that, I guess. Yeah, because it's super important. You have to like what you do,
Yeah.
and with custom clothing, it's great, but it's definitely you trading time for money because you still have to be there and still do the visits and still,
No, no doubt.
yeah. So for all those folks that think that it's absolutely amazing, next big thing is custom clothing, yeah, they have to realize that it takes a lot of time and big networks to actually do it because it, it,
Yep.
it just takes time.
You're absolutely
Brilliant.
right.
Sir, thank you so much for your time. And we obviously, what we're going to do as well, we're going to link up whatever you want to link to, whether that's a project that it's about to start or whether that's website that
Yeah.
it's half built, but you want to share it. Obviously send me those links via Messenger or something. We'll put them on as well.
Sure.
And yes, we'll definitely see each other in person in Menfluential, no doubt.
Yes, sir. Well,
And then
appreciate your time.
yeah, we'll know that chat in various of groups because that's another way to connect, right, with like-minded people. Join some groups on Facebook, talk, give value, just share your ideas and opinions, and you're going to be all right.
Yep.
So yes,
Learn and grow, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel all by ourselves.
correct. Yes, thank
So,
you so much, sir. It's been a pleasure. I enjoyed that.
all right, sir. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest
Thank
of
you
your
so
day.
much. Cheers. Take
All
care.
right, take care.